Watch this.
And he walked out and he's like, I'm going to a bodega, but you know about that, right? And I was like, what are you going to order? And he didn't answer that one.
It's a court case which carries implications for the upcoming presidential election, being covered by national media outlets and one former Bronco. She tells us what it's like sitting in on Trump's trial. How many people vote for precinct positions?
I think that election I got 9 votes and my opponent got 6. So not many.
They may not get a lot of votes, but their position carries a lot of weight when it comes to the direction of a political party. Have you noticed precinct committeemen on your ballot? You might now. Idaho lawmakers may have turned down a certain federal summer food program for kids last month, but that hasn't stopped some school districts from offering other options.
I was just walking home in like plain sight of everybody, and I feel the nip like on my ankle like that, like my leg was moving and it bit me.
The last time we spoke with Ximena Bustillo, she was recovering from being bitten by a fox on Capitol Hill. At the time, Ximena was a reporter working for Politico, not used to being the big story being covered by Capitol correspondents. Well, these days, Ximena is still a reporter, now working for NPR, and she's covering perhaps the biggest story of a generation. For the first time, a former president is facing felony charges for paying hush money to an adult film star. Donald Trump has called it legal expenses paid through an attorney. The Manhattan District Attorney calls it election interference. And just 4 years removed from being a BSU student, Ximena Bustillo is calling in her reports from court every day and sharing those stories with Andrew Bartline.
No one is above the law.
A dichotomy in our democracy
USA!
is playing out in real time outside a lower Manhattan courthouse. Because on the inside, it's an unprecedented criminal case.
It is the first ever criminal case against the sitting or former U.S. president.
And Ximena Bustillo
I graduated in 2020 from Boise State.
has a front row seat.
I'm a politics reporter over at NPR. It's a little bit of happenstance of right time, right place.
Whereas former President Trump is accused of the opposite.
34 felony counts, and they all really boiled down to 11 hush money payments that were given to adult film actor Stormy Daniels.
What exactly are the allegations? What are they saying the former president did?
And the allegations are that Trump was worried that any sort of scandal regarding infidelity in his marriage,
Hi, everyone.
Specifically with an adult film star, could turn voters away in November 2016. They were labeled as legal retainers, but for tax purposes, that might have been incorrect. So the question about election interference and labeling for taxes.
And by New York law, the president must be in court every day of the trial.
He is very open to coming and talking at us when we're in the hall. Sometimes that means literally being louder. Sometimes that means outlasting everyone and asking the question. You have to know exactly what you're going to ask, how you're going to ask it in a way that will trigger a response.
It's making for some unique interactions.
At the end of the day, I was finally like, where are you going after this? And he walked out and he's like, I'm going to a bodega, but you know about that, right? And I was like, what are you going to order? And he didn't answer that one.
Maybe because the former president wasn't hitting up the C-store in Harlem for a bite, but rather to campaign in the November election.
He is always reminding us that this is its own form of election interference. At least that's what he's alleging, because he cannot be traveling every day, making all these other campaign stops, because he does have to be in court Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. The campaign is definitely a really big part of this trial.
And a big building block in a blossoming career that still remembers the days of budding.
I see it on your wall. You have an Idaho Press Club award past your shoulder.
I do.
You're not forgetting where you came from. That's pretty cool.
But I think it just kind of goes to show what the possibilities and the options are, even if you don't come from a background of, really high socioeconomics, if you don't have a very fancy degree from a top tier journalism school. I always say that my best degree has been my political science degree in covering politics.
Ximena adds she's covered multiple civil trials involving the former president. She says they can go long, and they often do. In this case, they're still in jury selection, and in total, Trump is facing 88 state and federal charges across the country. That can be easy to confuse them, but the distinction here, Brian, this is a criminal trial.
Right.
That's what makes this so unprecedented for a former president. Even a sitting president hasn't happened before.
Did she explain kind of what the vibe is in that courtroom?
I mean, he's friendly enough to talk to him. He's
Yeah.
joking. Well, I guess it wasn't a joke. He literally was going to a bodega to campaign.
At a
that was not
convenience
a
store.
joke. That's actually what he was doing there. It seems that there is an amicable relationship between the press and them, but yeah, it's a very serious situation.
All right. Well, campaigning at a convenience store probably better than showing up at the Four Seasons.
Better than not campaigning at all.
That's true. All right. Thanks, Andrew. Well, for the last couple of years, the 208 has been covering the change in leadership and subsequent infighting within Idaho's majority party. Speaking of election implications, there have been stricter rules passed by the state GOP about who can register as a Republican, about whether elected Republicans are Republican enough, and the policies being pursued through the State House. This new direction of the party has prompted a lot of long-term Idaho Republicans to question how this happened and what could be done about it. We've gotten messages from viewers like Pat, who said she moved to Idaho because it is a red state. How do we remove GOP Chair Dorothy Moon and her unbalanced committee members out of office she holds and out of our state? Or Steve, who sent us a message about Chair Moon and this trend of censoring elected Republicans, calling it a joke. Steve asked, who elected you to your office, Dorothy? Well, Steve, in a way, as a registered Republican, you did. You may not know this, but your ballot on your GOP closed primary ballot, there are a couple of names you either marked or maybe you didn't that had a direct correlation to the current direction of the state's majority party. When it's time to take a look at your primary ballot this May, squeezed in between selections for Supreme Court justices and county commissioners, you'll see a section for picking party officers. The precinct committee members, a political position you probably aren't too familiar with, usually being sought by a singular or sometimes a coupling of names that may be just as unfamiliar to you. Are they kind of like the invisible candidates?
To a lot of people, yeah. I mean, they're not usually actively going out and campaigning.
Amos Rothstein was once one of those invisible candidates.
I first got elected in 2012.
As a college student in Latah County. How old were you?
Oh, God. How old was I? 22?
22, okay.
Yeah.
But Amos was bitten by the politics bug back when he was just a boy,
That means automatic recount.
while watching the Bush-Gore election in 2000.
I thought this is kind of the perfect mix of news, importance, and entertainment. I didn't really know what it all meant when I was 8 years old, but I got involved shortly after in every cycle since 2002. When I was 10, I volunteered in my first campaign, involved every cycle since.
Helping a governor get elected is one way to get involved, but Amos also learned at a young age where his efforts might have more impact.
The local organizations really matter. Those are the ones who are putting together volunteers. Those are the ones who are doing the outreach to voters in their community.
That peer-to-peer, local-level politics, that's precinct committee members.
I just kind of got thrown in.
Ben Furman was asked to run for his seat in Bingham County at the last minute 2 years ago.
I got a phone call from Dan Cravens and said, hey, we need someone to run for precinct committee member. Will you do it? I was like, what's that? He goes, well, it's no big deal. Just fill out this paperwork. It'll be easy.
Ben did it all in about 2.5 hours.
And turned it in. I was like, sweet. I guess now I'm running for a position.
A position, Ben realized,
And then people go to the ballots and they say, oh, well, I don't know him, but I do know him. Check.
that maybe didn't get a lot of attention at the polls.
I think there's about 1,100 voters, registered voters in my precinct. I won my election 2 years ago by 70% of the vote and got just under 200 people.
But it's a role that would reverberate through the Republican Party.
My experience, my knowledge of is usually precinct committee members are an afterthought. Nobody really knows what we are, what we do.
So being the afterthought, there's a lot that falls to that position.
Yeah, there is, but people don't realize that. I mean, let's talk about what a precinct committee member is, right? They're supposed to be the liaison between the party and the grassroots. So they are the person, the conduit that gets information up and says, hey, my community feels this way, and brings information back down and says, hey, the party thinks this. Then they're supposed to get out the vote. So during election time, as Republicans, we're supposed to support Republican candidates, and precinct committee members rally the troops. Then they vote at the county level. So when you have a sheriff or a commissioner who resigns or the office becomes vacant, it's the precinct committee members of that party that get together and vet and nominate somebody to take their place. And then they vote at the state level.
The state-level responsibility is where the power of precinct committee members comes into play. They kind of control, eventually, the direction of politics in Idaho.
Yeah.
That direction is dictated almost immediately after they are elected in the May primary. Within 10 days, precinct committee members meet and they elect their leadership. That leadership then selects delegates to the state convention. At the convention, those delegates decide on the party platform, the party rules, and the party leadership. Like the election of Dorothy Moon as GOP chair in the summer of 2022.
But the nominees can be anybody. Well, Northern Idaho, Kootenai County nominated David Riley to be a delegate at the convention. He's not a precinct committee member. He is what he is, and he went as a delegate.
What Dave Riley is an anti-Semite who participated in the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017, who then moved to North Idaho. And just months before the 2022 GOP state convention, Riley ran as a Democratic candidate for governor. At the convention, Riley was behind a political prank involving pizza and a local homeless shelter.
It's the person standing behind him in the plaid shirt.
And the shelter pointed to David Riley.
Yes.
So when you stack the deck, because most people don't understand or haven't in the past understood how all this process worked, you get people that go to the convention who don't necessarily represent the traditional Idaho values that those precincts are supposed to represent.
The deck started getting stacked long ago, according to Amos.
You know, it's sort of a long water filter process that, you know, before you see it in your cup, there's a lot of processes it goes through. But yeah, you're right.
But you get enough of them.
You get enough of them.
There's enough of that carbon and charcoal in there.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's overflowing, and you don't see the tide coming.
But Ben says the tide really started to rise more quickly, more recently.
At some point, somewhere, you have people who feel like they don't have power, they don't have a voice. And I think over the years, those people realize that we don't have any power as libertarians, but if we become Republicans, then nobody will know the difference, and then we can get in and we can start pushing our agendas.
And a true, actual right-wing takeover is happening right now in the state of Idaho, and there's nothing that these people can do about it.
A tactic amplified by the likes of white supremacist and another North Idaho resident, Vincent James Fox.
Here's the solution, right? The solution is local politics, amassing power in these pockets of the country until it's time to unify. Amassing power. Just get involved. Go to your local GOP meetings. Push these people further right. Push them. And if they don't push, if they don't budge, then replace them. Period. Point blank.
Perhaps that's why this election cycle is seeing a few more, quote, mainstream Republicans step into races that used to be relatively unknown.
Because who is in control of the Central Committee has become so important.
I believe across the state, I think there's something like 950 precinct committee members total, and we have over 500 of them that are contested. Because we've woken up. We said, wait a minute, that guy is not representing my community the way that I would represent my community. I think it's time for a change.
You're not running on, social or fiscal issues like the people in the building behind us are when they run for office. You're running on talking about essentially the conscience and the direction of the party, and whether or not your neighbors agree with your vision of it or not.
Starts at the precinct level.
The precinct committeeman election.
Correct. Right now, I don't think there'll ever be a time in Idaho's history where the precinct committee members and the precinct races are more important to our future.
Both Amos and Ben believe this recent growing trend of censuring elected lawmakers by central committees is not the party they joined all those years ago. That would be the party of Reagan, they both said. A party with a big tent where they agree on the core principles like fiscal responsibility, small localized government, but where there's plenty of room under the big tent to disagree on the fringe issues. Speaking of a big tent, there are 145 precincts in Ada County alone, which is Idaho's most populated county. You compare that to Clark County, Idaho's least populated, there are only 3. By the way, we did reach out to the state party for their comment on precinct committee member elections. Our request, once again, went unanswered. Well, summer's almost here for students in the Gem State. A couple more months. And for Boise schools, at least, the summer meal program is almost back, too. Jude Binkley explains how kids can get free breakfast and or lunch in today's 411.
During day 5 of Chad Daybell's trial today, jurors saw paper trails relating to his and his wife Lori Vallow Daybell's finances. Daybell is charged with murdering 2 of Lori's children, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, as well as his first wife Tammy in 2019. One of today's witnesses, Rexburg Police Detective Chuck Consitis, talked about financial and business records relating to suspects and victims in the case. Consitis found that Tylee and JJ were receiving Social Security benefits from their fathers, who were both dead. He talked about Lori transferring the kids' benefits into and out of her own account before and after the kids were last seen.
We believe that Tylee was killed 10 days later.
And Detective, was there anything significant about that deposit date to you?
JJ was killed a few days later.
An email was also read from Chad to a realtor in Hawaii asking for a place to rent after Lori and him got married in Hawaii in early November 2019. In the email, Chad said the couple had no kids. At that time, law enforcement was looking for missing Tylee and JJ, and they later learned they were killed months before in September. The trial continues tomorrow. Caldwell police say one man is dead and another is behind bars because of a domestic disturbance around 5:30 this morning. Police say the shooting happened on Trinidad Street near the intersection of Homedale and Lake Avenue in Caldwell. They found a 21-year-old man at the scene, but he later died at the hospital. Police say the suspect, 33-year-old Felix Santiago Torres, drove to the Nampa Police Department and turned himself in after the shooting. He was then taken to the Caldwell Police Department and booked into jail on a first-degree murder charge. Free summer meals are back for the Boise School District. The federally funded program provides free breakfast and lunch for kids aged 1 to 18 at the different parks and schools on your screen. The program starts at the end of May. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Jude Binkley.
we've had more cloud cover as of late, but that's the bright side of the cloud cover is that you get beautiful sunsets just like that, the sun reflecting off those clouds, creating some really beautiful views. Also, a beautiful view over in Sun Valley today and many places across the region with more blue skies, a little bit of clouds in some spots. A few mountain areas have been seeing some light showers throughout the day, but not anything too impactful. So our temperatures have been more on the comfortable side, 50s in valley locations and towards the 40s in the mountains, near 50 degrees over in the Magic Valley. And overall, what we're expecting over the next 48 hours is some chilly mornings. So if you've done any of the planting, just know we're expecting frosty temperatures for the next 2 mornings. The temperatures will be warming in the afternoons, and you can see that we get closer to Friday. That'll be about 10 degrees warmer than today. And then I mentioned those widely scattered mountain showers. They will still be around through the next about 24 hours or so. So here's what we're expecting for the morning tomorrow. 31 degrees, the expected low for Boise. Certainly chilly in the mountains, and we're expecting to get close to the mid-20s, mid and upper 20s for Magic Valley spots. So as we get closer to seeing the end of these freezing temperatures as we get further into spring, I just want to let you know we still have some time where we typically see these. These are the average last days that we see 32 degrees for spring. You can see Boise, that's the beginning of May, and then a couple days later we get closer to the midpoint of May, and that's when that's expected to happen for the Magic Valley. As we get closer to Friday, we will see those temperatures increase all the way through Saturday as a high pressure ridge continues to build in the region. So here's what we're expecting to happen with those temperatures in Boise. You can see continuing to jump as we go into Saturday with a high of 74 degrees. So tomorrow will be just a touch warmer for us, a little bit of those light winds, but still breezy. And you can see as we continue through the weekend, we're expecting to warm up. And then as we go into Sunday, we dip back down briefly before more warmer temperatures will be on the way.
We got a lot of comments about the precinct committee member story we ran today. Got one even from Bruce Newcomb, who's the former Speaker of the House here in Idaho, that said two culprits for this is one, closing the primaries in 2011 and the takeover of precinct committeemen by the extremists, which is kind of the point, which is why Tom in Meridian says, I'm a lifelong Republican, 82, but this is not my party. It's become a party that supports dictatorship. On the other side, if citizens want to stop the right-wing takeover of Idaho, we need to stop voting for Republicans. Teresa saying maybe more of the reasonable Republicans should actually stand up to that side of the party, and maybe it wouldn't be such a problem even in these lower levels. I'm a Democrat through and through, but have respect for old school Republicans, non-MAGA. Glad to hear some are trying to take back the old values, says Kim. How do we find out who is a mainstream candidate for our precinct and who is a far-right candidate, asks Sage from Boise? Well, that answer comes to you from, well, probably B&B here. If you're a Republican, I suggest you do research on all these people that are putting their names in for precincts. This election means a whole lot. I hope people are paying attention. So that's basically it. You gotta have to look into it yourself. Feel free to reach out to your precincts, your local precincts, your county committees. Find out who these people are on the ballots. All the sample ballots are out there now. The May primary is coming up at the end of May, the 21st of May. So you have some time to kind of take a look at some of the names that are in your precinct. Not many, so you don't have to do a lot, but you can kind of look into it by just making a few phone calls, showing up to a few meetings. Take some effort, but that's on you. I'm a lifelong Republican, but this is not my party. We already got through that one. Is that the last one there? I think we missed one. I think that's all there is there. But anyway, the point is you have this power in your hands to find out who these people are that are on your ballot and do some research. Look into it. Make a phone call. Show up. We'll see you tomorrow.